On the 1st of August, 1944, France, the German High Command watched in a mix of awe and panic as General George S. Patton's Third Army erupted across the countryside. Towns fell one after another, entire divisions were overrun, and the American onslaught moved with relentless speed. The Germans had positioned 72 of their most feared heavy Tiger tanks along the path of Patton's advance, believing these mechanized monsters could halt his momentum. Each Tiger tank, with its formidable 88mm gun and thick steel armor, was designed to dominate any conventional battlefield. On paper, they were unstoppable. In reality, what unfolded was a masterclass in tactics, coordination, and speed that shattered even the most legendary German weaponry. If you want to witness exactly how Patton crushed Germany's elite armor, subscribe now and stay tuned for the full story. Before diving deeper, it is essential to understand why the Tiger tank was so feared. The Panzerkampfwagen Tiger, or Tiger Y, was a beast of a machine, weighing 56 tons of solid steel. Its armor was nearly impervious to the standard anti-tank weaponry of the Allies, and its 88mm gun could destroy any Sherman tank at extreme range before the enemy had a chance to respond. In conventional combat, a single Tiger could hold off an entire column of Shermans. It was said that it often took 4 or 5 Shermans to bring down one Tiger, while the Tiger itself could knock out 3 or 4 Shermans before falling. German propaganda had elevated these machines to almost mythical status, earning them nicknames like untouchable from the British and American press alike. Yet the Tigers had critical weaknesses, vulnerabilities that Patton understood better than most Allied commanders. First, they were slow. On roads, their maximum speed barely reached 15 miles per hour, and on rough terrain, they crawled even slower. Second, they were mechanically unreliable. Their complex engines and transmissions frequently broke down, leaving some tanks abandoned before even reaching the battlefield. Third, they were fuel-hungry. By the summer of 1944, Germany was desperately short on fuel, and many Tigers simply ran out of gas before seeing combat. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, they excelled in defensive positions. When forced to maneuver rapidly, attack unexpectedly, or respond to multiple threats simultaneously, their advantages became liabilities. German commanders knew these limitations, but in August 1944, they were forced into a desperate gamble. Patton's Third Army moved so swiftly that traditional German defenses could not respond in time. The German High Command decided to concentrate their elite Tiger Battalion along likely avenues of Allied advance, aiming to halt Patton's momentum. They believed this technological superiority would be enough. They were gravely mistaken. Patton, a master of maneuver warfare and combined arms, refused to fight on German terms. He understood that speed, coordination, and relentless pressure could nullify even the most fearsome weapon. Using infantry, artillery, aircraft, and tank destroyers in synchronized attacks, he created overlapping threats that left the Tigers exposed from multiple angles. When one Tiger tried to reposition, it would break down under mechanical strain or be destroyed by flanking Sherman fire. Fuel shortages immobilized others, and airstrikes from Patton's fighter bombers cut off supply lines miles behind the front. What the Germans had prepared to hold for days fell in mere hours. By the end of the first day, over 20 Tigers had been destroyed, abandoned, or immobilized. Tank destroyers moved into ambush positions overnight, ensuring that when surviving Tigers attempted to relocate at first light, they were already bracketed. More fell to mechanical failures under constant pressure. The Third Army's relentless pace, combined with coordinated multi-directional attacks, turned the supposed invincibility of German armor into a liability. Patton had effectively hunted the Tigers, exploiting every weakness while maintaining the momentum of his advance. Unlike other Allied commanders who engaged in slow, methodical assaults, Patton refused to pause. Every day that passed without pressure allowed the Germans to regroup. Every delay was unacceptable. Accepting losses was part of the strategy. Sherman's would fall, but the operation would not slow. Patton instilled these principles throughout his command. Tank commanders were trained never to retreat, even when confronted by superior armor. Artillery officers learned to strike in coordination with infantry movements and anti-tank weapons, ensuring the enemy was pressured on multiple fronts simultaneously. The result was a battlefield in constant motion, one where German Tiger crews could not fight effectively, no matter their training or experience. The Americans had discovered that even the most advanced technology could be rendered useless against superior tactics, coordination, and relentless tempo. By the end of the engagement, fewer than 10 Tigers remained operational. This was not luck or miracle. It was the result of leadership, planning, and an understanding of how to exploit the enemy's weaknesses under real-time conditions. The battle that Patton waged that August illustrated a fundamental truth of modern warfare. Speed and coordinated pressure can outweigh superior technology. German forces had brought their best tanks to the front, expecting to dominate. Instead, they faced a commander who refused to fight by their rules, who understood the vulnerabilities of their machines, and who orchestrated a combined arms operation with unprecedented efficiency. The lesson was clear. When facing a technologically superior enemy, it is not always the quality of hardware that decides the outcome, but the ability to adapt, coordinate, and maintain momentum. Patton's victory over the Tigers became a case study in how leadership, innovation, and relentless action could overcome even the deadliest battlefield innovations. By the 2nd of August, 1944, the chaos Patton had unleashed only intensified. German commanders, realizing their first line of Tigers had failed to halt the Third Army, attempted to regroup and reposition their remaining heavy tanks. But Patton's forces were already advancing too fast. Every movement, every decision the Germans made seemed to be anticipated, countered, or disrupted. The coordination of American artillery, infantry, tank destroyers, and air support created a dynamic battlefield where German forces were constantly on the defensive. Even the most experienced Tiger crews found themselves overwhelmed by the relentless pressure and unpredictability of Patton's tactics. They were designed for deliberate, calculated engagements, not the continuous, multi-directional assault Patton demanded. The Americans exploited every flaw in the Tiger design. The tanks' slow speed and limited maneuverability made them vulnerable to flanking attacks, while their high fuel consumption and mechanical unreliability left many immobilized or abandoned far from the front lines. German crews attempting to retreat often found themselves cut off by pursuing Shermans or artillery barrages, forcing them to destroy their own vehicles to prevent capture. Patton's fighter bombers relentlessly attacked supply convoys, further crippling the Germans' ability to sustain their armored units. By the second evening of the battle, the once formidable Tiger Battalion had been reduced to a fraction of its original strength. The psychological impact on German soldiers was immense. They had expected to dominate, but instead, their elite forces were being systematically dismantled. Patton's approach emphasized constant movement, combined arms coordination, and aggressive exploitation of weaknesses. He refused to allow the Germans to dictate the terms of engagement. Rather than engaging in head-on duels with the Tigers, he used terrain, firepower, and maneuver to create situations where their superior guns and armor were neutralized. Shermans would advance under artillery cover, while infantry and tank destroyers targeted vulnerable flanks. Air support struck supply lines and rear positions, ensuring the Tigers could not refuel or receive ammunition. Every element of Patton's army worked in unison, creating overlapping threats that the Germans could not counter. The Tigers' advantage in firepower became irrelevant in the face of such relentless, coordinated pressure. American intelligence also played a critical role. Reconnaissance units provided real-time information about enemy positions, allowing Patton to concentrate forces where they could achieve maximum effect. His commanders were trained to act independently, making split-second decisions that maintained momentum and exploited every German mistake. The Third Army moved as a single organism, with each unit supporting the others, leaving no opportunity for the Tigers to operate effectively. By nightfall on the second day, the remaining German heavy tanks were scattered, demoralized, and increasingly ineffective. Their mechanical failures, lack of fuel, and inability to respond to multiple simultaneous threats had turned what should have been a dominating force into a liability. The Germans had underestimated the tactical brilliance and audacity of Patton's command. Their strategy relied on the presumed invincibility of their technology, assuming that the Tiger tanks alone could halt the Third Army's advance. Instead, Patton demonstrated that superior tactics, leadership, and coordination could turn even the most powerful weapons into vulnerabilities. He had created a battlefield environment where speed and pressure were as deadly as any gun, and where hesitation or delay was punished with swift counterattacks. The fall of the Tiger Battalion was a testament to his understanding of armored warfare, his ability to integrate multiple branches of the military, and his relentless pursuit of objectives. By the morning of the 3rd of August, the Germans were forced to acknowledge that their Tiger deployment had failed completely. The remaining tanks were ordered to withdraw, but even retreat offered no salvation. The Americans maintained relentless pursuit. Tank destroyers and artillery units cut off routes of retreat. Fighter bombers strafed columns, and Shermans pressed forward to prevent regrouping. Mechanical breakdowns continued to plague the Tigers. Engines overheated, tracks broke, and crews were forced to abandon their vehicles. The very speed and aggression that had made Patton feared on the battlefield ensured that no Tiger could escape unscathed. By the end of the 3rd day, fewer than 10 Tigers remained operational. What was meant to be a demonstration of German armored superiority had ended in catastrophic failure. The lessons of these days extended beyond the destruction of German armor. Patton's approach revealed fundamental principles of modern warfare. Never allow the enemy to dictate the battle, exploit every weakness in equipment and personnel, and maintain relentless pressure to prevent regrouping. Technological superiority alone does not guarantee victory. It is the integration of strategy, speed, coordination, and audacity that determines outcomes. The fall of the Tiger Battalion was not due to luck, nor to individual heroics of Sherman crews. It was the product of Patton's leadership, his understanding of enemy vulnerabilities, and the disciplined execution of combined arms tactics. It demonstrated that even the most feared weapon could be neutralized through superior operational planning and the audacity to act decisively. The German High Command was forced to reevaluate its assumptions about Allied capabilities. The Third Army's destruction of the Tiger Battalion reinforced Patton's reputation among friend and foe alike. German commanders had feared his speed and aggression, but now they also feared his ability to dismantle their most advanced machines with calculated tactics. For the Americans, the engagement validated their training, coordination, and ability to execute complex operations under extreme pressure. The battle also served as a warning. No matter how formidable the technology, failure to integrate it effectively into a coordinated strategy renders it vulnerable. Patton had turned every advantage of the Tigers into weaknesses, and his victory reshaped how armored warfare would be understood for the remainder of the war. By the 4th of August, 1944, the battlefield in northern France had become a relentless maelstrom of steel, fire, and chaos. German commanders had hoped that their remaining Tiger tanks could regroup and mount a defensive line capable of halting the Third Army. Instead, they were met with an American force that refused to pause, refused to consolidate, and refused to allow the enemy any respite. Patton's men advanced with a precision and coordination that left even the most experienced German officers bewildered. Each Sherman tank, each artillery piece, each squad of infantry and tank destroyers was part of a single unified operation, designed to exploit every flaw in the enemy's armor and every weakness in their positioning. The speed and audacity of the Third Army had transformed what should have been a defensive stalemate into a continuous, devastating assault. The remaining Tigers, once symbols of invincibility, now faced the full brunt of Patton's tactical genius. They were hunted systematically. American reconnaissance units reported their positions in real time, and air support struck from above to destroy fuel convoys and immobilize the tanks. Artillery units shelled any high ground or likely firing positions, while tank destroyers maneuvered to the sides and rear. The Tiger's legendary 88mm guns could only strike forward, and their thick armor could not protect against flanking attacks and explosive ordnance dropped from the sky. What had been designed as an impenetrable force was reduced to an assembly of immobile targets, constantly harried and forced to react rather than act. Within hours, mechanical failures compounded their vulnerability. Engines overheated under sustained operation, transmissions broke under the strain of maneuvering, and fuel shortages rendered more than half of the remaining Tigers useless. By mid-morning, several Tigers had been abandoned by their crews, who were forced to flee under American fire. Patton's approach was relentless. Unlike previous Allied commanders who might have paused to consolidate after encountering heavy resistance, he pressed forward, ensuring that no Tiger could regroup or find a defensible position. Sherman's moved as part of combined arms teams, protected by artillery and infantry, while tank destroyers flanked and struck at weak points. Aircraft circled above, dropping bombs and strafing German columns, further disrupting supply lines and morale. Every move by the Germans was countered almost immediately. Retreating Tigers were caught by pursuing units and destroyed from behind, where their armor was weakest. Attempts to repair or tow disabled tanks failed under the constant pressure. The Third Army's pace left the Germans no time to adapt or recover. Their vaunted armored superiority had been neutralized not by superior firepower, but by relentless movement, coordination, and psychological pressure. By the evening of the 4th, the battle had been decisively turned. Of the 72 Tigers that had been committed to the fight, fewer than 10 remained operational. Some had been captured by American forces, others abandoned and destroyed by their own crews to prevent capture, and the rest were irreparably damaged by mechanical failure or sustained bombardment. The German High Command was forced to acknowledge that their elite armored units had been defeated not in a single monumental clash, but through a continuous campaign of disruption, exploitation, and speed. Patton had transformed the battlefield into a dynamic environment where traditional advantages of armor were rendered irrelevant. He had taught his forces to think, adapt, and act with initiative, and the result was a complete collapse of the Tigers' effectiveness. The consequences for the Third Army were profound. With the destruction of the Tiger Battalion, Patton's forces encountered little organized resistance as they advanced deeper into occupied France. Town after town fell, German defenses crumbled, and strategic positions were captured at a pace previously thought impossible. By the 7th of August, the Third Army had liberated hundreds of French towns and captured thousands of enemy troops, all while maintaining the initiative and momentum that had become the hallmark of Patton's command. His aggressive tactics not only destroyed the immediate threat of the Tigers, but also disrupted German planning across the region, forcing enemy units to scatter and abandon fortified positions in a desperate attempt to regroup. The psychological impact on both sides was immense. American troops were emboldened by their success, while German soldiers came to fear the unstoppable pace and audacity of Patton's command. Patton's ability to exploit the weaknesses of the Tiger tanks extended beyond mechanical vulnerabilities. He understood the importance of morale, coordination, and initiative in armored warfare. His forces were trained to operate independently yet cohesively, ensuring that each unit could respond to threats and opportunities in real time. This decentralization of command allowed the Third Army to maintain momentum even when encountering unexpected resistance. German commanders, who had relied on rigid hierarchies and the presumed superiority of their technology, found themselves constantly outmaneuvered and unable to respond effectively. Patton's genius lay not only in his understanding of tanks and firepower, but in his ability to orchestrate an entire army as a living, adaptive force capable of overwhelming even the most formidable defenses. By the 9th of August, the Third Army had effectively broken the German lines in northern France. Patton's forces were poised to continue their rapid advance toward key strategic objectives, unimpeded by the once feared Tiger tanks. The lessons of the battle were clear. Technological superiority alone could not guarantee victory. Even the most heavily armored and well-armed vehicles were vulnerable when confronted with speed, coordination, and aggressive exploitation of weaknesses. Patton's triumph over the Tigers was not a matter of chance or luck. It was the result of careful planning, audacious execution, and the disciplined application of combined arms tactics. The battle demonstrated that leadership, initiative, and operational tempo could turn even the most feared weapons into liabilities. For historians, military analysts, and enthusiasts, the destruction of the Tiger Battalion in August 1944 stands as one of the most remarkable demonstrations of tactical brilliance in modern warfare. Patton's ability to integrate infantry, armor, artillery, and air support into a coherent and aggressive strategy exemplifies the principles of mobility, coordination, and initiative that continue to influence military doctrine today. The Third Army's victory was not merely a triumph of technology or firepower, it was a triumph of leadership, planning, and the relentless application of speed and pressure against an enemy who thought themselves invincible. By the 12th of August, 1944, the Third Army under General George S. Patton had achieved a momentum that few Allied commanders could have imagined. German defenses, once thought impregnable, were collapsing under the continuous pressure of rapid maneuvers, coordinated strikes, and relentless pursuit. The destruction of the elite Tiger Tank Battalion had far-reaching consequences beyond the immediate battlefield. German High Command was forced to acknowledge that even their most technologically advanced and heavily armed units were insufficient against an adversary who refused to fight on conventional terms. Patton had not only neutralized the threat of the Tigers, but had fundamentally altered the dynamics of armored warfare, demonstrating that speed, coordination, and initiative could outweigh superior armor and firepower. The psychological impact on German soldiers was profound. News of the Tigers' failure and the rapid advance of Patton's forces spread quickly through the ranks. Units that had once felt invincible found themselves retreating under pressure, their morale shattered. The myth of the Tiger as an unbeatable machine was shattered not in a single heroic duel, but through the systematic application of superior tactics. Patton's soldiers, conversely, were emboldened by their success. The knowledge that careful planning, combined arms coordination, and aggressive execution could defeat even the most feared weapons instilled a sense of confidence and determination that would carry them through the rest of the campaign. The Third Army had not only destroyed tanks and captured towns, it had demonstrated the power of leadership, initiative, and audacity in modern warfare. Strategically, the consequences were equally significant. The rapid collapse of German positions in northern France opened key supply routes for the Allies and allowed them to press deeper into occupied territory with minimal resistance. Patton's advance forced the Germans to divert resources and reinforcements to counter his movements, weakening their defenses elsewhere and creating opportunities for other Allied forces. The Third Army's success illustrated a fundamental principle of operational art. By maintaining constant pressure, exploiting weaknesses, and dictating the pace of engagement, a commander could force an enemy to fight on unfavorable terms, regardless of technological superiority. Patton's victory was not merely a tactical success, it reshaped the operational landscape of the Western Front, forcing the Germans into a defensive posture that would continue for months. In the aftermath of the battle, military analysts studied Patton's approach and codified his methods for future generations. His principles of never fighting on the enemy's preferred terms, coordinating combined arms offensives, Exploiting supply and logistical vulnerabilities, maintaining relentless tempo, and accepting calculated losses became a blueprint for armored warfare. Patton's ability to integrate intelligence, reconnaissance, artillery, air support, and mechanized forces into a unified, aggressive strategy demonstrated a level of operational sophistication that few commanders of the era could match. The lessons learned from these engagements would inform military doctrine for decades, proving that leadership and strategy could turn even seemingly insurmountable obstacles into opportunities for victory. Patton's reputation among both allies and adversaries was solidified during this campaign. German commanders, who had feared his speed and aggression, were now fully aware of his ability to neutralize technological advantages through audacity and ingenuity. Allied commanders, while sometimes frustrated by his relentless pace and unorthodox methods, could not deny the results. Patton had achieved in days what others required weeks to accomplish, liberating towns, capturing prisoners, and destroying enemy forces with efficiency and decisiveness. His combination of foresight, tactical innovation, and sheer force of will created an enduring legend that would define his career and elevate him to a status rarely seen among military leaders. Yet the campaign also underscored the inherent risks of such aggressive command. Patton's methods demanded constant vigilance, exceptional coordination, and the willingness to accept losses that more cautious commanders might have deemed unacceptable. Each decision carried the potential for disaster, and only through careful planning and the skill of his subordinate officers could the Third Army sustain its rapid advance. The balance between audacity and discipline was delicate, but Patton's understanding of his forces and the limitations of the enemy allowed him to exploit opportunities without overextending his units. His leadership was not reckless. It was calculated, adaptive, and relentless, a combination that defined the success of the Third Army and left a lasting imprint on military history. By the end of August 1944, the Third Army had achieved what many had considered impossible. German forces were in retreat, key objectives had been captured, and the momentum of the Allied advance was unstoppable. The lessons of the battle against the Tigers and the rapid push across northern France became a case study in how initiative, speed, and coordination could overcome superior weaponry. Patton's victory demonstrated that in warfare, technological advantage alone was insufficient. Leadership, strategy, and the will to act decisively were equally, if not more, important. The Third Army's triumph was a testament to the power of innovative tactics applied with boldness and precision. For historians and military enthusiasts, the campaign stands as a defining example of how a determined and visionary commander can rewrite the rules of engagement. Patton's ability to understand the limitations of enemy technology, exploit their weaknesses, and coordinate diverse forces in a unified, high-tempo operation transformed the battlefield and reshaped the course of the war in northern France. The legacy of these actions extends far beyond the immediate victory. It serves as a reminder that ingenuity, courage, and decisive leadership can triumph over even the most formidable obstacles. Patton's name became synonymous with speed, aggression, and relentless pursuit, a symbol of what a commander can achieve when he refuses to be constrained by convention. Ultimately, the destruction of the Tiger Battalion and the subsequent advance of the Third Army exemplify the principles of modern warfare. integration, tempo, and the judicious application of force. Patton's campaign proved that success depends not merely on the weapons at a commander's disposal, but on how they are used, coordinated, and applied in the context of the battlefield. The story of August 1944 is more than a tale of tanks and firepower. It is a story of leadership, vision, and the enduring impact of a commander who understood how to convert potential into decisive victory. Patton had not only defeated the enemy, he had demonstrated the timeless value of speed, initiative, and the courage to act when others hesitated.